to access cultivars that are resilient to climate change and adaptive to climate change. And with this, I'm going to talk about an employer of mine, CJR, where we have more than 12 international gene banks operated worldwide. And in Africa, we have a good number. We have in Nigeria, we have in Ethiopia, we have, in so many countries. And some of these gene banks are storing some of our precious germplasm. So that this is material that can be accessed by our farmers, by our researchers, and by our communities at any time. You can see the number of accessions that are being stored. We have cereals, grains, legumes, forages, tree species, root and tuber crops, and bananas. This is a place to keep these species or germplasm collection so that if at all we are not able to mitigate adequately, and these species cannot be available generally within the community, there is still a place that we can go to and bring back these species and still keep them within our farming and our diet systems. We also have government-owned gene banks in a number of countries within Africa. And these are resources that still need to be tapped more by our farmers and our communities. Apart from just having the gene banks and having the government-led gene banks, there's also been a lot of work by research institutions to set up community seed banks. More than community seed banks have been reported in Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and countries like that. And what happens with the community seed bank is that in a community, farmers are able to bring in their species that they find very dear to them, very important to them. And these species are put in this community seed bank. During a planting season, the farmers borrow this material. And when they plant, they have to bring back some of the seeds after they have harvested. Most of these species are those that are regenerative. They are not those that you have to buy the seeds for you to grow. So this has been a very sustainable process at community level to make sure they can access diverse seeds of the varieties that they like for their food and nutrition security. Then we've had a lot of capacity building and awareness creation. A number of countries are moving towards having annual food fairs where they promote diversity and traditional foods. A number of food outlets are now being supported to bring in diversity in our food systems. So that's to encourage farmers to grow these crops within their farming systems. And then we've had some universities that have been able to incorporate courses on climate change and biodiversity. One of them is what we are doing right now, and that is very, very impressive. So what can be done better? We need to do more of the enabling environment. We need to reinvent indigenous traditional knowledge systems. We need to enhance and support the use of multiple species within our farming systems. Then there is need to have more enhanced investment in renewable energy so that the use of charcoal and firewood can go down. Then there's need to have incentives to adoption of regenerative agricultural practices. And then lastly, building capacities to collect and analyze climate change related models such as early warning systems, response model, vulnerability assessment, which are things that are lacking. So if there's something, it finds most of us out unprepared, and the effects are always devastating. So these are some of the key references of what I've been talking about, but there's still a lot out there that you can go read and add to this that we've talked about. So thank you so much. Over to you, Sam.
Wonderful. I'm looking for the reactions. At the lack of it, allow me to just give a round of applause on behalf of all members. Yes, I can see applause coming to you, Dr. Beatrice, and you've done very well. You've paced yourself with 1 minute to spare. So members, ladies and gentlemen, kindly, thank you. Give a round of applause and some stars to Dr. Beatrice coming your way. Again, colleagues, members, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sam Onjohi, Country Manager, Africa One Health University Network, that is AFROHUN, Kenya. I will be moderating this session, including the Q&A. And my reason for saying that is to remind you to put your questions using the Q&A function. So kindly have your questions ready, type them out in the Q&A function, and we will take them through and have our presenters going through. Again, Dr. Beatrice, thank you for an amazing presentation. Whereas the picture is grim, if we continue doing business as usual, you have gone ahead and offered some solutions and some hope at the end. And so, yeah, we may not get to 2090, but at least we know we can start. We can start changing the picture right now. So thank you so much. Members, ladies and gentlemen, we want to proceed to our next presenter. Having heard that amazing lecture from Dr. Beatrice, we now want to invite Gigma to make his presentation. He's going to take us through a case study for the next 10 minutes. Gigma, it is 10 minutes to the top of the hour. And at the top of the hour, 6 or rather in Kenya, or 5 p.m. in South Africa time, the top of the hour, we'll be adjourning your session before we proceed to the next one. Gigma, you have the floor. Kindly proceed with the presentation, and welcome.
Hi, all. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. So I'm going to present on anticipating climate-induced food prices through anticipatory humanitarian action. First of all, just a quick reminder of how climate change and food insecurity or food security are interplaying with each other. We know that climate change can affect food production. I can give a quick example. When it's flooding, for example, this is going to affect the crop yield, and at the end of the day, the small-scale farmer will not be able to get anything at the end of the season, so they will fall in food insecurity. Just an example. We also have climate change affecting, of course, the climate-sensitive livelihoods, as well as the supply chain from Burkina Faso, for example. And I know that recently, because of floods, one of the main national roads, that is the roads linking up the two capital cities of the country, was cut off by the rains. So basically, as a result, this will affect the transport of goods, including food, to the people in need of it. So as a result, this can be an impact of climate change on food availability, or in the increase of food prices, leading to food insecurity for the most vulnerable or for the most food insecure communities. We also have, of course, food quality and safety because of drought or because of floods, because of extreme heat. We can have the multiplication of waterborne diseases affecting the quality of our food. And of course, all of these combined will lead to food and nutrition security. But of course, the other way around is also possible. The production of food, or let's say all of the activities leading to food security, can contribute also to climate change. We know that agriculture, for example, is one of the sectors that is contributing the most to greenhouse gas emissions. So this will have some feedback on climate change. This said, to face that, and knowing that climate change is something that is predictable, or at least at the shorter time scales, when we consider weather and seasonal time scales, we know that this is something much more predictable. In the humanitarian sector, we felt that it might be better to try to anticipate food crises instead of responding to them. It is very good when there is, I don't know, a flood and people have lost the crops, to go and distribute some cash or some food. This is very good, but it is better if we could anticipate that. If before the occurrence of floods, we could already distribute let's say, for example, flood-tolerant seeds, so that people can still manage to harvest something at the end of the season. So with this in mind, humanitarians came with what they called the anticipatory humanitarian action, or simply anticipatory action, shortened AA. What is it? So it is a new mechanism in the humanitarian sector that allows humanitarians to trigger funding in advance of a disaster, of a predicted disaster. To illustrate this is the slide I have. So before, how we used to do things is, we know that a climate shock is going to happen, a drought, a flood, a heat wave, or something like that is going to happen. We don't do much, we just sit and wait until it happens before we start to run everywhere to just get the funds to respond to what has occurred. So if people have already caught some, if there is, I don't know, an epidemic outbreak, malaria or cholera outbreaks, for example, this will mean that people that have already died won't be even, let's say, affected by the responses that we are going to provide. So the response is, of course, very good, but it's not really the solution to everything. And so they decided, humanitarians, to come up with anticipatory action. So what they do in anticipatory action is, as soon as they receive the information that a major climate crisis is happening, a flood, a drought, a heat wave, cold wave, or any other heat-related, any other climate-related disaster is happening, and between this, the issuance of this alert and the actual occurrence of the disaster, they will take action based on the triggering of funding that will allow them to take action so that the most vulnerable communities are protected. Because, of course, ultimately, the objective of the humanitarians is to protect the most vulnerable communities. So I'm going to give the main components of this anticipatory action. So it's mainly 3 of them. So first of all, the emission of the forecast, so the alerting agency, and in this case, for most African countries, it's going to be the National Meteorological or Hydrological Service, and then the set of actions that people need to take. So basically, pre-identified action. It's not after we have received the alert that we need to start thinking about the kind of actions we are going to implement. No, we decide together of what actions we're going to take with the potential donors, with the potentially affected communities before we even receive the alert, so that when the alerts are sent out, it is something kind of more automated. It is easier for the humanitarians to take action. And of course, the third and one of the most important components is the finance, because it's important to have the actions. It's important to receive the early warning, but unless you have enough resources, enough money to take action, this is not going to come into practice. So one quick example, first of all, is the case of Niger. Niger is a country in West Africa which is quite vulnerable to drought. So the Niger Red Cross has developed a drought anticipatory action plan. And how does it consist of? As early as May, the rainy season in Niger lasts roughly from June to September, October. So as early as May, when there is an indication that there is going to be a drought in the country, there are going to be a number of actions taken by the National Red Cross Society of Niger. And this will target both livestock farmers. The actions for livestock farmers are those that we have in blue, as well as crop farmers. And these are those that we have in green. So for livestock farmers, for example, they will do some sensitizations. They will recommend farmers to store fodder. They will do the vaccination of the livestock, the cattle, etc. They will distribute some vitamins as well as reinforce pest control. For the crop farmers, they are going to distribute drought-tolerant seed that will ensure that even if there is a drought at the end of the season, they will manage to harvest enough to sustain themselves until the next rainy season. Because as you may know, in West Africa or in the Sahel, we only have one rainfall season. And as a result, if you miss out on this one, you need to wait until the next one to be able to farm again. So this is a concrete example that the Niger Red Cross is giving. And of course, being able to harvest this despite the drought will allow the communities to not be in food insecurity and therefore not in malnutrition, with all the subsequent advantages that this have in terms of, for example, preventing school dropouts and related things. The second example is from Kenya. And here I'm going to talk about the Kitui County. For those that know a bit Kenya, it is a semi-arid land in eastern Kenya. So in 2015, they received, the National Red Cross Society of Kenya received the information that there is going to be El Nino. El Nino is a climate phenomenon which is associated with heavy rainfall in Kenya, particularly in this semi-arid place. And this typically leads to crop losses as well as the outbreak of several diseases. So when in 2015, the National Red Cross Society of Kenya received that information, what they did was to, with the support of the IFRC, the International Federation of the Red Cross, to provide some hybrid maize seeds that are tolerant to both dry spells, but also floods, or if you want heavy rains, to a lot of farmers in the Kitui County. And each farmer received a total of 2 kg pack of seeds ahead of the rainy season. And these hybrid seeds, as I said, are healthier and suitable to the specific climate or microclimate of the Kitui County. So the National Society's volunteer distributed the seeds to a total of 21,000 households, and many of them were also trained on how to store maize and also better or climate smart practices. And of course, this at the end of the season allowed to have a relatively good harvesting despite the heavy rains that the county has received. And the harvested maize served the household pays for the school fees. I was giving the example of school dropout, for example, in India. So school dropout didn't occur because they had the possibility to pay for the school fees as well as cover the medical expenses and other household items. So all in all, it was a good use of the scientific information about this climate phenomenon called El Nino that led to a surplus of food after the harvest instead of the usual shortages. Thank you very much.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. A round of applause to Gigma for the wonderful presentation. He had 10 minutes to share the case study, and I think he's done justice. That has been quite a presentation. So thank you, Gigma, for that. Again, members, ladies and gentlemen, kindly let's give some applause to Gigma and some flowers and some celebration in the chat. My name is Sam Wanjohi, Country Manager, the Africa One Health University Network, AfroHun Kenya. I am your moderator, and I'll be moderating the Q&A session as well. And I wish to invite you to send in your questions using the Q&A function. And you can do that as we invite now our final presenter, John Otieno, to share his case study. John, you have 10 minutes. It's 2 minutes past the hour, and you have the floor. John, over to you.
Thank you so much. My name is John, and I would like to take you through a case study for Somalia. I wanted to confirm if my slides can be up and running. Sam?
Are you sharing? Are you sharing your slides?
Not really.
Do you want me to? All right, there they are.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful.
So just to give a quick background, thanks to the previous speakers, and just wanted to link this discussion today based on what Dr. Beatrice has presented, and of course, Guga, that highlights quite a number of issues that are linked to climate. My presentation will be focusing on a case scenario in terms of health response because of climate-induced challenges. And the case study is from Somalia, just to give a quick background. Next, please. So just to give a context of what Somalia has in terms of malnutrition and challenges that they have really been facing since the 2022 drought. You'll see in the next slide, the numbers are really, so just to give a perspective. So in Somalia, the humanitarian context has a very multiple challenges. Number one, we have over 1.2 million people who are displaced in 2022 due to drought. And of course, you are aware about the conflict situation that has been spiraling more often than not. And of course, it's unpredictable because certain pockets experience armed conflict, others because of drought. And so these challenges really brought a lot of issues about access to health services. and more than 1.8 million children suffer acute malnutrition. That, of course, includes children, includes a number of children who are over 500,000 who are severely malnourished. And can you imagine that we have about 4 in 100 Somali children die during the first month of life, and 8 in 100 before their first birthday? And interestingly, we also have 1 in 8 that do not turn, do not see their 5th birthday. Of course, this is really, really mind-boggling. And if you look at the numbers as well, like I mentioned, we had a fifth, 5 failed rains in Somalia, which really pushed numbers. And if you look at the malnutrition classification, they were at a very critical stage of more than a 15 point, or rather more than a 15% in terms of GAM rates. And the comparison between 2017 drought and 2022 really shows a very serious, an increase in terms of numbers. And we were able to tabulate the numbers from all the admissions that we had, and especially because we had serious displacements. Remember, when there's drought, people tend to move from where they, from their homes, looking for pasture, looking for food. And when they move in between, the ecosystem on health access becomes a challenge. And so we had a significant number of people who were driven because of, who were displaced because of drought. And if you see the next slide, Somalia, so this is just an overall overview in terms of the location. We say Somalia is based in the Horn and East Africa. And in terms of, again, humanitarian challenges, we have fragmented donor support, which of course, most of the time, when there's an emergency, it takes long for people to respond, especially on the donor approvals, getting budgets, accessing humanitarian funds, and this sometimes reduces the turnaround time for response. We also have some parts that are because of insecurity. We have non-state actors who have been causing a lot of havoc within those locations. Then we also have we also experienced cholera and measles, and of course those locations that I've listed really experienced a lot of challenges, issues about diarrhea, acute respiratory tract infections of over 15%. And then malaria, and of course, due to diarrhea because of a lack of access to water, people tend to take water from unsafe or unsafe, drink unsafe water or access water from open places. And the next slide will show you how some of the now this is just gives you an overview of the Somalia context. Now, interestingly, we have the health system, and it's been they have both the national, state level, regional, and some of the working groups that exist. We have maternal, infant, and young child nutrition. For those who are in the nutrition space, we have IMAM and the other technical working groups. And this dashboard just shows how a chronological numbers over time, because these are real-time data. So looking at the number of children who are reached within Somalia, beyond just action against hunger response within Somalia region. And in the next slide, I would like to share with you. So in terms of our presence, and just to give you an overview of some of the response plans that we did based on the numbers that I've shared with you. So Action Against Hunger has been in existence in Somalia since 1992. And we've also have staff, national staff who are employed through one of our projects, World Bank projects. And we have about 96 national staff, 7 international staff, and of course, in terms of male, female. And from Ministry of Health, we have about 1,000 staffs who are also employed that we support in those places. But I would like to pull your attention towards the map that is at the on my right side, where if you look at Mogadishu, Jowar, and so much of the location. So Hudur had the most worst hit, the green part. Most of the interventions that we did around that time were around Hudur, and a lot of influx. We had more than 5 IDP camps, and each IDP camps, based on the numbers, we could only host about maybe 100,000 people or more, between 100,000 and 200,000. But then issues about numbers, insurgency, insecurity, access to these locations was also a very big challenge. Then in terms of partners that we work with, just to give you an overview, we also drive local partners who can access the locations that are sometimes being controlled by the insurgents. And so we work with the local partners in those locations. Next, please. Now, so a case scenario, just a quick one. So if you look at 2021 and 2022, 2022 is the orange one. We had over, you could see for every month, the number of admissions that, are coming in. So children who are being admitted into the stabilization centers, we had an increase of over 45%, which was the highest record compared to 2021 and 2022. And then between January to May 2022 and 2023, we had, of course, an increased 10%. So you could see that the admissions, once they increase, it means there are certain outcomes. So either children who will stay longer, children who will either die because of other underlying conditions, and children who will have relapse cases. So they keep on going home and then they come back. Next. Great. So so that was the first one. And then in terms of outpatient therapeutic admissions, you can see that Somalia was worst hit based on the GAM rates that I had shared with you in the previous slide. We had about an increase of 105% of admissions in comparison between 2021 to 2022 across all the sites. And then we also had, in terms of admissions, so outpatient therapeutic admissions increased up to between 2022 and 2023, we had a 24% increase. This just shows you how drought or displacement really caused a lot of challenges in Somalia. Next. And then the last one, because this is targeted supplementary feeding program, is also very important because sometimes because of unpredictable numbers, influx of women, pregnant women, and malnourished children who are moving, we also decided to do check on the hotspots and ensure that they're able to receive nutrition services around those locations. And you can see how the percentages increased between 2021, 2022, and then we also had 2022, 2023, which was of course 37% increase in terms of those who are accessing, the admissions in terms of numbers. Then the last one that I wanted to share with you, next, please. Yeah, so with all the numbers that I've shared, and of course, time is not on my side, but I just want to take you through some of the interventions. And of course, we don't work in isolation. We work with the Ministry of Health and of course with the other line ministries. So in an emergency situation or in a humanitarian situation, we have different avenues for intervention. So number one is looking at high energy biscuits that was supported through by good support from UNICEF. And then we also had vitamin A supplementation, deworming, because how this can exacerbate some of the conditions. And then the fresh food vouchers that were distributed, promoting emergency maternal, infant, and young child nutrition sessions. And of course, doing WASH, water hygiene and sanitation, food security and livelihoods, and then building resilient programs. Then the last one that I want to take you through, that just to give you a case scenario, is that in terms of immunization, which is very important, and we have in Somalia, we have a campaign through one of the projects. We were able to target children under the age of 5 to ensure that immunization does not stop. We continue to do sporadic checks, so screening for malnutrition and ensuring that we do what is called timed and targeted screening, and of course real-time admissions to ensure that we do not lose any children in between. And now on my last segment of my presentation, I want to take you through the last, go to the next one because of time. Yes, so this is one of the areas that I also wanted to really dive into. During that time, we had a cholera outbreak in Hudur district, which I had mentioned before. And community health workers have really been our strong supporters, ensuring that they're able to do mapping, do referrals. They're able to also manage, using the the drugs and the commodities that they have at community level. And we saw quite a number of, especially during cholera outbreak, we had reduced fertility of, the number of children who died. In terms of within those 3 months, we didn't have any death cases recorded. And we had about, 2,398 beneficiaries or people that we work with within the communities. And then the last segment that I wanted to present to you is the lessons that we were able to learn, challenges and the lessons that we were able to learn. We saw an increased access constraints due to insecurity. By the way, in one of the locations, we had our commodities being, we had a raid by insurgents, and they took everything and also abducted 3 of our health workers, and they took almost 3 months in Ethiopia before coming back. And you can see how the disruption being caused by climate and then induced by another insecurity issues is multi-pronged, and it becomes really difficult. Then most of the main internally displaced person settlements across Somalia are also private land, which are controlled. So before you access, you have to talk to the community and the gatekeepers, who sometimes demand for money or a lot of, they want support or services, which sometimes may not be, we are not able to achieve within that short time. Then we also had resource strains because of increased number of people in the camps. And of course, the last one that I wanted to mention is the insufficient access to clean water. Imagine a health facility without clean or access to water. Issues about cleaning of the area and ensuring that the facility is clean, ready for service or support becomes a challenge. And then last one that I wanted to share with you in conclusion is that we were able to look at, based on our experience in Somalia during the drought period, we had lots of lessons learned. So first is that first response activation by NGOs is possible and life-saving. And of course, scalability is very important, because sometimes you find the number of people displaced, they don't stay in one place for a long time. Once they get the services, they will move, because they are also moving with their animals into those camps. So here you have people who are also concerned and really concerned about their animals vis-a-vis, continuity of health services. Then community health workers play a pivotal role in terms of building a very robust healthcare system, and issues about, ensuring that in terms of reporting, follow-up, monitoring, and sometimes they're also giving us updates where we have insurgencies like, Al-Shabaab will be an imminent attack by Al-Shabaab, then they will tell us in time, and then we will see how to do some, housekeeping measures and ensure that security is updated. Then, of course, we also learned that timely preposition of medical, nutrition, and wash supplies is very crucial, because you never know when emergencies may occur. And then, like I told you, we also work with local organization because there are certain places that are hard to reach. And because of the insecurity situation, it is not easy to really access some of these locations. So they help us issues about communicating within the local language, MIYCN messages that are being spread or shared within the communities becomes much more easier because we are working with the local partners. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, John, for the wonderful presentation. Again, members, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to John, who was our final presenter for today. He was rushing against time, and he was racing against time. He had a lot of information, like we could tell, but then it had to be compressed in such a short time. And so, John, we appreciate you. We also want to appreciate Dr. Beatrice. We want to appreciate Gigma for the wonderful presentations. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are 11 minutes to when we are supposed to adjourn. We have an array of questions, and I want to applaud each and every one of us for sending through these questions. I note we are almost 2,000 participants, and so if each and every one of us was to send a question, I think we'd be here till next week. And so with that, I think allow me to just filter, I think 2 per presenter, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, two questions per presenter. And then I believe the course organizers will try and get the remaining questions to the presenters and have them answer, and then feedback would be given or responses would be given back to the participants, the course participants. So to Dr. Beatrice, I'll give you 2 questions. You will answer. I'll move on to Gigma, 2 questions, and then I'll move on to John. So here we go, Dr. Beatrice. How do we address the issue of food insecurity by taking into consideration climate change? Again, how do we address the issue of food security by taking into consideration climate change? For example, genetically modified seeds have been adopted which are only grown for 1 season in preference to the indigenous seeds, which could be planted for more than 1 season and at times more resistant to drought, pests, and diseases. That's question number 1. Question number 2 for you. Prof. Ekesa, please comment on the genetically modified crops with regard to food security and nutrition. Do you think they will increase food security since they are early maturing? Dr. Beatrice, over to you. In a minute or 2, your responses.
Yes, thank you, Sam. You've just chosen the very sensitive questions. Oh my God. Okay. No, I'll say what is possible. So first of all, thank you for the questions, and thank you, course participants. We hope we'll get an opportunity to also looking at what we are not able to respond to now. So going to the first question, how do we address the issue of food security by taking into consideration climate change? And you're talking about things. I think the first thing that we have to look at is policy advocacy. You know, if we can be able to sell the idea and convince our decision makers and policy makers on the effect of climate change, then, you know, because people listen so much to our policy makers and our politicians, they are the ones who are making these decisions on what is really actually being decided for us. So if we can enhance us as practitioners, us as researchers, development agencies, enhance our relationship with the policy makers so that they are with us as we measure, as we assess, and as we come up with magnitude of the consequences of climate change, then they can be able to change their narrative when they're in their closed doors discussing some of these agendas. So I think is engaging some of these, we call them the movers and the shakers of what we are doing in our discussion. And that is why there is a lot of moving forward participatory and inclusive research and development action. So I am thinking we have tried to do that within the CGR and within other international development agencies, but even at country programs, let us make sure that when we start working on some of these interventions, or when we start collecting data, we make some of these policy makers and policy influencers part of the process. When we make them part of the process, they will see the problem, they will see the magnitude, and they will realize this is actually dangerous. Then they can change the discussions that happen in closed doors where some of us are not there. So policy advocacy and engagement would be one strategy that we should try to incorporate in our day-to-day activities, both government sector, research, development agencies. So if we can focus on that, then we can change what is actually happening, because we do a lot of work out there. We come up with results, but then these results are not adequately taken up, understood, and they don't form part of people who make the big decisions. So that is what I would say would be one thing that we could really put in a lot of effort in. Then the other question was on genetically modified commodities with regards to food security. I defined what food security is. And I talked about quality, quantity, safety, and nutritious. So this is a very contentious issue, but what I would say is that it depends on actually what you're going for as a community. Are you looking at the quantity or the quality? But if we talk about actually food security, some of the genetically food will meet depending on what you're looking at. If it is the quantity, if you're in Kenya, you've not eaten ugali, if you want maize that produces big maize stalks, you will go for that. But then, as you said, you grow them for one season, then you have to still buy seed for the next season. So I think it is us to come up with more evidence on whether these varieties that we are advocating for, whether genetically modified, whether indigenous, how can they be sustained and come up with a clear projection and narrative that can be shared with the people who make the decision on using genetically modified food. So I wouldn't say whether they are the best, but I know they contribute.
Wonderful.
Yes,
wonderful.
they contribute to
Thank
food
you.
security. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Beatrice, for very, well navigating through those questions very well, and offering your insights into those. Now, I have two questions for Gigma. Now, Gigma, how can humanitarian action be reimagined to enhance problem solving and impact? Again, how can humanitarian action be reimagined to enhance problem solving and impact? And the second question, what steps can be taken to transform Africa into a global hub for food production? Kindly try and use some 2 minutes to answer those ones so that then we can spare some time for John as well.
Thank you very much. I think to the first question, to the first question, I would say that it is very important for the humanitarian sector to also take advantage of the new tools that we are having today. Nowadays, we have a lot of IT, we have a lot of artificial intelligence and things like that. So it is quite important that the humanitarian sector also try to get into innovation. This is very important if we really want to make more impact. We see that more and more, you see lots of drones, for example, delivering food items and things, something similar. So it is very important for us, the humanitarian sector, to try and get into the innovation. And another thing I would say is also try to, let's say, have, as a bit what Dr. Ikesa was saying, a bit of a stronger policy around humanitarian work. You see, most of the humanitarian interventions are done in emergency situations, but they are not often associated with a good or a strong policy background. So it might be important also to reinforce that. The second point, which is, I think, a more political question, how we can do, what we can do to make Africa a, I think for us to become a great food hub for the world, it is, again, first of all, being able to master our development. The development in Africa, and this is not just for the agricultural sector, it is very, very shock sensitive. So any external shock that is happening elsewhere around the world is, first of all, going to impact Africa. We have seen that with all of the economic crisis. We have recently seen the Ukraine and Russia war that has affected Africa quite a lot. So it is very important for us in Africa to try and see how we can, first of all, enhance our collaboration across the different regions in Africa. We have, for example, Central Africa, which is quite good in terms of rainfall, receiving quite a lot of rainfall, and therefore being able to produce quite a lot of crops. We have other regions, for example, the semi-arid regions of East Africa or the Sahel, that can be good in terms of multiplying the livestock production. So all of this is possible. We just need to have these different connections. And then there is this, there is also the need to take advantage of science. So with climate change, we always talk about climate change as a negative thing, but we are seeing a lot of floods, for example, happening at the moment in West Africa. It also happened in Eastern Africa. In Southern Africa, it is drought. So when we take floods, for example, if we have a good water management strategy, we'll be able to store this water and use it later for food production. So a good use of science is definitely going to help us in Africa improve our agricultural systems. And the last point is, of course, to have the youth take the lead, or rather to contribute significantly to all the decision-making processes, because ultimately tomorrow they are the ones that are going to be impacted. Thank you.
Wonderful. We are at time, but I want John to answer one question. This discussion is obviously amazing, but John, we are at time, but allow me to just have you answer this in 1 minute. How do you engage the local communities in governance of your programs? This is to enhance sustainability of your programs, and basically, how do you integrate humanitarian and development efforts? In a minute, how do you engage local communities in governance for your programs?
Great. That's a very, very interesting question. So the how is, like you saw from from the slides that I presented, is that we work with local organizations that are already established, that are registered, that are, already being, we'll say, managed within the confines of Somalia, NGO management. And that we work with them closely, especially when we are doing baseline surveys, carrying out midterm reviews, doing community feedbacks. And of course, they are the ones who now host dialogue sessions. And one thing I wanted to mention, Sam, is that we currently work with other partners on the HDP. Now, humanitarian and development were being run, at different levels, but the peace bit of it has been missing out. Now, Somalia is a very interesting context. It has both climate and conflict. So sometimes you may respond from a humanitarian approach, during an emergency. So during the drought, we are giving non-food items, providing shelter, vaccinating animals, but then it goes beyond that. So issues about building resilience, and we've closely worked with government and local communities to ensure that they understand the intersectionality between conflict and how that is also pushing climate issues. And my last point that I wanted to mention is that we work with communities currently to also start looking at what is called citizen anticipatory watch, so anticipatory action watch. So we work with them, and we've been, an interesting bit as I conclude was one day we went to the field and we were asking the communities, now that the drought we have had failed rains for the last 5 years, they use the traditional one. So they tell you, when we see birds moving from Hudur, to this other side, then we know that it's going to be a dry season. They already have something that they're talking about. So the conventional one. And then lastly, they will tell you, the old people will tell, when we hear our bones cracking, then we know that it's not going, the rains are coming. And so we've been able to work closely with communities. And I know today was just more of an introductory, but we have interesting insights about community engagement. We also have community health volunteers who are also part of our, participating in our internship programs. So we band them into internship programs, and they're the ones now who are working as community health assistants. And it becomes much more easier because they already learn, they learn what we do, and then they continue to implement. I submit.
Wonderful, wonderful. A round of applause to all our presenters. They have a lot of information. They have a wealth of information, ladies and gentlemen. But because of the limited time that we have, I think we will beg to adjourn at this point in time. My apologies. We are 4 minutes past the hour. But like we said, we shall be looking at sharing the, all right, let me see, sharing the questions with the facilitators, with the presenters, so that then they can be able to respond and look at modalities of having the questions back to you, so that then you can be able to have your responses. We want to take this opportunity to thank you for being with us. We are still at well above 1,500 participants, and that is an indication of how engaging or interesting this session has been. We want to give a request that you kindly go through the chat. There is a link to the session survey, the post-session survey, or you can quickly just do a screenshot of the QR code and kindly share your feedback with us. The feedback would be important for us to improve the next session, to look at the areas where we can tie up any loose ends that we need to address, even as we improve the next sessions moving forward. Remember, this was the session 7 of 11, and so we would wish to continually improve. So we kindly request that you take a moment to take a grab of the QR code, or go to the link that has been posted in the chat, and share with us your feedback. You're also invited to join the WhatsApp group for any updates and information from the course planning team, which would be important for you. We've seen questions coming through on when the exam will be, and so on and so forth. And so it will be important for you to join the WhatsApp group to get those updates. Again, we want to appreciate each and every one of us, each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking time to participate in this session 7 of this course. It wouldn't have been possible without you. I mean, if you did not join, then Dr. Beatrice, Gigma, and John will be speaking to, I think, me and my fellow facilitators. But because you made time to join this session, then it has been a success because of you. Our appreciations to Dr. Beatrice again, Gigma, and John, for taking time to prepare the information that they have. They were excellent, presentations, and for taking time to share their expertise with us. We also want to appreciate the course planning team that you can't see behind the scenes, for just making sure that everything is flowing smoothly. I believe it is now some 6 minutes past the top of the hour. We want to appreciate you as we adjourn this session today, for taking the time from wherever you're joining us from, whether it is in the evening, in the afternoon, or in the morning. We are glad that you made time to be with us. We look forward to seeing you in the next sessions. And with that, we want to say thank you, merci beaucoup, obrigado, and till next time, I think we will stand adjourned. Thank you once again. We will try and ensure that the responses are captured to the vast array of questions that have been put forward. From me, Samuel Njohi, the Country Manager, Africa One Health University Network, Kenya Country Office, I want to say thank you for giving me an opportunity to be your moderator for this session today. With that, allow me to say